military. It's a very exciting day. As you can see, I've got my USA attire on, saluting all the veterans. I'm very happy and proud to say that I have family members that have served and have sacrificed for this country. And I want to salute everybody else out there that has as well. And so, to you, to your family, happy Veterans Day. Well, why am I here today? Last time I sat down like this, I did a brief video, maybe about a week ago, showing some different ways that Stellar is being conceived of using, because a lot of people only saw Stellar as maybe just a token, right? Not really seeing it as the full platform that it is. Well, today I want to talk a little bit more about stablecoins, because I get a lot of questions, right? You got stablecoins, you hear e-money, tokens, all these different terminologies, right? So, as an example, I'll show you here. So, like we have Saldo MX, built on Stellar, is a wallet operating as an e-money company in Mexico, right? What does that mean? All right. You have WireX. Here goes WireX, right? Earns an FCA e-money license, right? Okay. Well, what about stablecoins? You heard that term, right? Well, here you go. You got um, you got Stellar. Well, what can you do on Stellar? You can create a digital representation of a US dollar on Stellar. You call this a dollar token. So, hey, now you got a token, dollar token. That's another terminology. Let's see. What else do we have here? Let's see. All right, so here we go. Now we got USD, right? So the Stellar blockchain will soon support the USDC stablecoins. So as I just said, there's a lot of different terminology, and if you're not familiar with it, you may get a little bit confused as to, whether or not we're all talking about the same exact thing. So I remember several years ago, Jesse Loon and Jen McCaleb were on stage, and we're talking about CBDC, central bank digital currencies. And a lot of people in the crypto community did not really quite catch on to it. At the time, there wasn't many people talking about it, besides IBM, Stellar, and a few others, to be honest. There weren't really much conversation. Well, as time has shown, and you've definitely seen and heard over the last year, the terminology for stable coins, USDCs, you have central bank digital currencies, you have the Bahamas that has launched a central bank digital currency. You have China that's talking about launching a central bank digital currency. I can go on and on and on. You hear that being discussed a lot this year, and I think that's only going to increase. So hopefully we can chat about it a little bit here. I do want to give a quick shout out to Sirius B, and I'm gonna give him a quick shout out because I think this is gonna be helpful. Shout out to Sirius B12. He's on Twitter. As you see, we follow each other, and he actually shared this this article here online not too long ago, maybe three weeks ago. I think it might have been as that long ago. Where and this is going to be by the IMF, and it really breaks down, in my opinion, kind of the history of the evolution of e-money, stable coins, the whole thing. And hopefully will help to answer some of your questions as to how this is all pieced together. So if you're ready, I am. Let's go ahead and hop right into it. So as you can see here, we have this IMF document, stablecoin, central bank digital currencies, and cross-border payments, a new look at the international monetary system. So this was the remarks of Tobias at the IMF Swiss National Bank conference in Zurich. This is May 2019. So we're going to kind of go through it here. So it starts off here, as policymakers, we must turn our attention to the international monetary system. So, towards solutions, including technological ones, and enhance global cooperation by upholding the role of the IMF as caretaker. So let's hop right into it, okay? So what is e-money? So e-money is a means of payment and a store of value fully backed by fiat currency. It says here, it is the digital prepaid card. So e-money thus also includes a version of stablecoins that is fully backed or collateralized by fiat currency. So just to hop back over here again, we have E-Money, we have WireX E-Money, and you have USDC stablecoins, right? So it's a form of a stablecoin. Okay, so let's continue here. So it goes in a little bit further, gives some examples, right? So think of WeChat Pay, Alipay in China, M-Pesa in Kenya, um, in the Caribbean, and USD Coin by Coinbase and Circle. Once again, just to go back here, what the IMF is referring to is the USDC token, which Coinbase and Circle did collaborate with on together. Okay, so let's continue. So it kind of goes on to say in Kenya, for instance, 90% of the population over the 14 years of age use M-Pesa. So just describing how much of a major impact it really is. So let's talk about some of the advantages that they state with E-Money. So some of the advantages is that E-Money works exactly like a strict currency board with each unit of E-Money, token, or account entry. There goes the phrase token, right? Fully backed by fiat currency. But why use E-Money and not fiat currency? So it says first, E-Money is better integrated. Second, for transaction cost, it's near costless and immediate. Third, users trust telecom and social media companies, it states. And fourth and finally, for network effects. So network effects is really important. So a digital economy giants contemplating the introduction of E-Money have an enormous installed base. Let's go ahead and highlight that. Enormous installed base. So, Facebook Libra, I'm sure, comes to mind. They mentioned WeChat. You have so many people already, congregating online. So let's talk about some of the risk here of E-Money, because they do mention risks. So the first risk is if it's used over and above the funds held in the trust account, there could be a run on money, on E-Money. And so, think of, let's say, Tether as an example, right? There's controversy as to how much, whether or not they have a full amount. Is it backed? Are these funds secured? The whole nine. Second risk is security, the security of the trust account. Despite the illusions of trust, funds can be invested in risky or illiquid assets, encumbered as collateral. So once again, do you know what's happening with that money? Okay. Third risk is the interoperability of E-Money and thus to market contestability. Okay. So we noted earlier, they stated here that the strong network effects in payments, if E-Money issued by different providers is not interoperable, only the largest providers will survive. So even regulation mandating common technological standards will not resolve this issue. It says that it was easier to get cell phones from different providers to talk to each other. In the case of E-Money, interoperability requires a common settlement platform. Now, the first thing that comes to my mind, Stellar, right? With the anchor systems. I think that's kind of answers that question. So a way to seamlessly and cheaply and securely transfer funds was a concern that they have. So let's go down. So it kind of goes down here and it says, let's look at tackling risks. Okay, so they're kind of going through the process here. So here's E-Money, the advantages. Here are the risks. How can we tackle these risks? So let's continue. So it says central banks could offer E-Money providers access to their reserves under strict conditions, of course. Okay, so there goes risk number one. If reserve accounts were protected from other creditors of E-Money providers in case of bankruptcy, that would take care of risk number two, right? So they have access to the funds, and in case that this E-Money provider were to go bankrupt, you protect the funds, right? So finally, central banks could ensure interoperability. Okay, so central banks step in between E-Money issued by different providers by offering a common settlement platform between trust accounts. And that's downward risk number three. So what they're saying is that they come in with their own system to offer interoperability. So it says, mind you, there's some other risks that are introduced. Um, but then it gets interesting. So further down, it says synthetic CBDCs. Okay. Now, draw your attention, dear colleagues. He begins. We have inadvertently created a uh, a new version that is which we call synthetic CBDCs. Okay, so we inadvertently created CBDC in this other process, but this is a new version which we would call synthetic. Why? So yes, if e-money providers can keep client funds as central bank reserves, and if those are protected from other creditors, then by proxy, e-money users can hold and transact in a central bank liability. Isn't that the very definition of CBDC? He asks. Well, synthetic CBDCs has notable advantages. Okay, synthetic CDBCs outsources several steps to the private sector. Okay, so I'm sure if you kind of follow, they've been talking about outsourcing and getting the private sector involved. Shout out to Brian Brooks. He's been, a strong component of that. So, technologies choices, customer management, customer screening and monitoring, including for know your customers, AML, CFT, anti money laundering, and combating financing of terrorism purposes. So they're saying, look, outsource it. The central bank, okay, merely remains responsible for settlement between trusts. Okay. So it goes on and further and says a synthetic CBDC is essentially a public-private partnership that encourages competition between e-money providers and preserves comparative advantages. So once again, this is still putting the central bank kind of in the center to handle all of the settlement, right? So let's continue. So as you see here, I kind of uh, drew a little stellar sign here because it talks about some open economy complications. And as I read this, just me thinking of like, okay, what are solutions? I do believe that Stellar offers a good solution for this. So it goes and says, check mark. Have you finished work and can now stroll along? Not so fast. Things get a little more complicated. Okay, so with them trying to be in the middle, it gets a little more complicated. So clearly, e-money can bring enormous benefits to cross-border payments, right? But these gains must be weighed against risk. So it gives a pretty good example, right? So you got a person in Zurich transferring Swiss franc e-money to a friend in, say, Italy. Okay, pretty simple. All right. Marlis clicks a button. Francesco gets the funds. But suppose Francesco wants to receive a euro-based e-money. Okay. To simplify matters, suppose both use the same platform, a fictitious pay and chat. Now, this pay and chat, Switzerland would draw down Marlis Swiss franc account and credit pay and chat in Italy, which would issue a euro-based e-money. Okay, that's right down here. So the only problem is that Francesco's e-money is now backed by Swiss franc reserves held at the Swiss National Bank. Clearly, this is purely fictitious. Okay, but the question is that this becomes a popular game of whack-a-mole. Okay, so this is the problem that they're kind of going through in their heads. And like I said, I put this up here a stellar sign because we have something called path payments. But anyways, right? So it talks about whack-a-mole. So let's go back to it. So is Francisco e-money fully backed? Yes. Pay and chat could continuously hedge its foreign exchange risk, but it has now become a lot harder to be transparent about it. And transparency is key for trust, and trust is key for adoption. Redemption risk also has reemerged. What happens when Francisco wants to redeem his e-money in euros? Okay, so you got Pay and Chat Italy may be able to draw down reserves it holds with the ECB, or Pay and Chat Switzerland could sell franc, and well, it's cumbersome, expensive, and potentially slow. Exactly the cost these companies are trying to avoid. So, what can they do? Okay, so they can focus on just main currency pairs from which there are large and relatively balanced capital flows to maximize. But this could also influence fragmentation, which they're trying to avoid. So let's kind of go a little further. Another risk that resurfaces is to market contestability. In our example, PayChat Italy extended credit to PayChat Switzerland, a mere accounting trick. However, uh, let's see, but they had to transfer involved into two separate entities. It would have induced risk. So going back here, essentially what they're saying is that you're looking at Paying Chat Italy extending credit to their same company, which is Paying Chat Switzerland, okay, which is just simply accounting. But had the transfers involved two separate entities, it would have induced credit risk. Clearly, then, transfers will be cheaper if they remain within the same company, but size will matter, just like in corresponding banks. This favors a concentrated market structure. So, one of the problems with that is that, the IMF is trying to look at ways where various companies, okay, competing companies can easily enter the network, provide a synthetic CBDC essentially, okay, USDC could be an example of this, and offer services to the people. So in looking at this, one of the risks that they look at in most cases is dollarization. Okay, so it goes into that. In most cases, the fund is concerned about dollarization as countries lose monetary policy control and as financial systems become more exposed. Okay. So it says, would e-money available across borders spell the end of weak currencies? Well, from a world of gray tones where those muddling through this persist, we might face a greater contrast. One either makes it or is taken by a foreign e-money. So this kind of concludes and it goes and says, what's the role of the IMF? And so it talks down here where it says the best defense against loss of monetary autonomy of excessive dollarization is good foreign policy. Okay, so what they're suggesting is that they can have a surveillance and can help. And requests for technical assistance in this area are already on the rise, which is good. The IMF convening power may be needed more than ever to bolster the international payment system, but this time also with new technologies. Okay, so it goes on. It says, could an international institution such as the IMF facilitate these operations by running a common platform? Or could new e-money be created with one-to-one backing by a basket of fiat currencies to settle transactions between central banks? Some have called this an ESDR or DSDR. Okay, so it kind of goes on. This is sort of the ending of it. That this is kind of hypothetical. Wherever we go, the M for monetary and IMF is bound to get new polish as we focus on new monetary challenges to the international monetary system. The years to come will be especially exciting for the global financial architecture. So I hope this was helpful. It's, as I said, this kind of carries and gives you an idea of how the IMF and the IMF is looking at it as well, has central banks, governmental agencies are really trying to understand how this new digital age of currency is going to intertwine. So with that, I'm done. If you got any questions, definitely comment on the video. I'll try to answer as much as I can. But until next time, ciao.